You ever have one of those moments that just feels impossible? A coincidence so weird it kind of makes the hair on your arms stand up. We've all got these stories, right? These little moments that just defy any easy explanation and make you wonder if there's something more going on. So what is that feeling? Let's get into it. I mean, just look at the story from a woman named Deborah Sweet. She's in this moment of just deep, deep grief, trying to figure out this new painful identity, and the universe just seems to spell it out for her on a license plate. That is an absolute gut punch of a coincidence. Seriously, how do you even begin to make sense of something like that? And moments like that, they lead us right to this big question. Is this all just random chance, a statistical blip in a wild, chaotic world? Or is it something else? A little hint that maybe reality is a bit stranger than we give it credit for. Like a glitch in the Matrix. And yeah, beyond the movie, that phrase has totally become shorthand for these super personal, weirdly specific moments. Like, you think of a friend you haven't seen in a decade, and boom, they call you the next day. It's that uncanny feeling that your thoughts somehow reached out and touched the world. And it just makes you stop and question everything for a second. But what about when that weird feeling isn't just happening to you? What if thousands or even millions of people all share the exact same memory of something that never actually happened? Well, that's when a personal little glitch becomes a massive collective mystery. This whole thing actually has a name, the Mandela effect. It got that name from a writer who realized that she, along with tons of other people, had a crystal clear memory of Nelson Mandela dying in prison back in the 1980s. But that's not what happened. He was released in 1990 and lived all the way until 2013. The thing is, that shared false memory was so powerful and so widespread, it kicked off this whole global conversation. And these memories are so specific. I mean, take one of the most famous lines in movie history. Millions of us are absolutely certain we've heard Humphrey Bogart say, "Play it again, Sam." You can probably hear it in his voice right now. But here's the crazy part. He never says that exact line in the movie. It's like a phantom quote that our collective minds just made up. And the list of these just keeps on going. There's the whole Shazam movie from the 90s where Sinbad played a genie, a film that an entire generation swears they saw, but it never existed. Or the Berenstain Bears, except if you go look at the books right now, it's always been Berenstain with an A. And maybe the biggest one of all, from Star Wars. It feels so wrong, doesn't it? But the actual line is, "No, I am your father." Okay, so it's one thing to have a glitch in our heads, but what if there's one literally etched into the surface of the planet? A mystery so huge you can really only appreciate it from space. So this is the Richat structure. Most people call it the Eye of the Sahara. It is a massive, almost perfect circular bullseye sitting right in the middle of the desert. For a long time, nobody knew how it got there. And it's the perfect example of our need to fill in the blanks with some kind of incredible story. And the story that really took hold? Well, as this Reddit user so perfectly puts it, it's gotta be the lost city of Atlantis. And it's not totally out of left field. The strange circular layout and the dimensions that the philosopher Plato wrote about, they match the structure so eerily that, for a lot of people, the case is pretty much closed. But then you have the scientific explanation, an eroded geological dome. So here we are, left with a choice. Do we go with the fantastic ancient mystery or a really cool geological process? Honestly, which story just sounds better? And that really gets to the heart of all of this. Whether we're talking about a license plate, a false memory, or a giant eyeball in the desert, why are we so wired to find these patterns in things we can't explain? Well, the answer is deep inside our own brains. So one of the big reasons for this is something called the frequency illusion. And you totally know this one. It's when you buy a new car, say a red one, and then all of a sudden you see red cars everywhere you look. It's not that there are suddenly more red cars on the road. It's just that your brain is now on the lookout for them. You're actively searching for that pattern. And this isn't some flaw in our programming, it's a feature. Think about it from an evolutionary perspective. This hyperactive pattern-finding system is what kept us alive. Our ancestors who thought every shadow was a predator were way more likely to survive than the ones who just dismissed the rustling leaves as the wind. It's always better to be wrong and safe than to be right and, eaten. But this built-in talent for finding the signal in all the noise, It's not just for wondering about the cosmos. In some jobs, it is an absolutely critical life or death skill, especially when the stakes are as high as they can possibly be, like when you're hunting for a serial killer. Homicide investigators are basically professional pattern seekers. They're looking for two crucial things. First is the modus operandi, the MO. That's the practical stuff a killer does. But the real golden ticket is the signature. This has nothing to do with how they do the crime. It's a ritual, a kind of psychological calling card that reveals the killer's deepest fantasies. And that's what can link cases that look totally different on the surface. Now, finding these patterns isn't like you see in the movies, where a detective just has a sudden flash of genius. No, it is a slow, painstaking, methodical process of digging through mountains of data, looking for tiny connections that everyone else missed. So how do they actually do it? Well, they use this really rigorous step-by-step process. First, they take every single piece of information, every interview, every clue, and break it down into basic concepts. Then, they start connecting those concepts, trying to see how they relate. And finally, they build one single core theory that explains how it all fits together. It's a way to turn total chaos into a story that makes sense. But even with all the data and all the systems, this quote from an actual investigator reminds us that it always comes back to people. Technology can connect the dots, sure, but you absolutely need that human element, that gut feeling, that empathy, to really understand the why behind the whole pattern. So we've gone from these personal, spooky moments to mass delusions, from wonders of the world to the darkest corners of the human mind. And it all circles back to this relentless human drive to find the signal hidden in the noise. And this really brings us to the main point. Our brain's default setting to see patterns everywhere, to connect dots and tell a story, that's not a bug. It is a fundamental feature of being human. It's a survival tool that might occasionally see ghosts in the machine, but that's only because it's way safer than missing a real monster that's actually there. Which, of course, leaves us with the ultimate question. In our own lives, when we have those unexplainable moments, how do we ever really know the difference between a pattern that's a meaningful clue and one that's just a beautiful, compelling story we're telling ourselves to make sense of it all?